everyone. This is Fadi, and with me here in studio is Dr. Jay Smith. And today we are going to capitalize now on the topic we shared with you last time concerning the 5 different canons according to the book, or at least the research of Dr. Shady Nasser. Today we're going to begin to focus on the different problems associated with these canons. And of course, no better than Dr. Jay Smith, who can unpack these problems for us. Dr. Jay, thank you so much, as always, for being here with us. We mentioned these 5 canons last time. So what are these different problems that we can now focus on as it applies to each one of them?
Yeah, Dr. Shady Nasser goes through these 5 different canons. What I like to do is take each one after another. And let's start with the first canonization. And to do that, we need to go back to the 7th century. Let's look at the slide. And we have to go back to what we know about how this canon was put together. And this is all from Sahih Bukhari, volume 6, book number 61, hadith number 510. And so this is Uthman's canon in Al-Bukhari. And when you look at, I don't want to read it all, you have it there in the Arabic, you have the English rendition. Let's just summarize what's happening here, what it's telling us. Right. What it's telling us is that there was another battle. Remember the first battle of Yamama in 632 right. is why they had to put the first Quran together. Now you have a second battle. This is happening up in Azerbaijan, and you're having a lot of the Medinans from Mecca, Medina, who are from the Hijaz. They're going up to Azerbaijan to fight against the Azerbaijanis. They're joined by those from Iraq and others from Syria. Right. And they're all together, and after the fight is finished, they go into the mosque to do their prayers. And as they're doing the prayers, these Hijazi Muslims hear the Quran being recited in other dialects or other languages, and they're quite upset. Hudayfa, who's the leader, comes bittering all the way back down to Medina. He's absolutely angered by what he's heard. They even went to blows. They were fisticuffing each other because of what they were hearing. And he comes to Uthman and he says to Uthman, we've got to do something about this. You can't have all these different Qurans. We must not be like the Christians and Jews who supposedly have different Bibles. We've got to just have one Quran. So they've gone up north, right, and they've heard an awful lot of different Qurans being recited in the north. Now they've come back down to the Hijaz. There's the north-south again. So Uthman agrees. Okay, we'll put it in the Qurayshi dialect. This is the dialect that Muhammad would have known. And so he decides to get Zayd ibn Thabit, the secretary of Muhammad, who had written the earlier Quran for Abu Bakr. That's right. Which was given to Abu Bakr, who then gave it to Umar, who then gave it to his daughter, Hafsa, who had been a wife of Muhammad, and she puts it under her bed for 20 years. But so Uthman does what Abu Bakr should have done, and he then has Zayd ibn Thabit to write it in the Qurayshi dialect, and then Uthman, interestingly, does something different. What does he do after that? Do you remember what happens next? He takes all the other Qurans
and supposedly burn them.
Exactly. You can't burn orality. You have to burn text. You have to burn paper. You have to burn books. Am I correct?
Of course.
So obviously these must have been codexes, which are books. You have to burn books, which suggests to me that these books are in existence in Basra and Kufa and in Baghdad. Now that's not their name at that time. That's their name for today. So what did he burn then?
He obviously burned something that was written.
These have to be consonantal differences. Ooh, These are not vowelizations. This has nothing to do with diacritical marks. You can't burn texts that have different dialects that early. And this is where Dan Brubaker is coming into existence. Now we understand why they had so many differences in the consonantal text. That's for another time. Let's don't get into that. That's the biggest problem yet that I don't think Muslims have even understood yet or even tried to answer. So let's go to the next slide, because the next slide shows the sequence. Started with Muhammad. There he is. He dies in 632. Muhammad was given one Quran. All right? He was given one Quran, Qurayshi Quran, I assume. And if it's the Qurayshi Quran, it must be the eternal Quran. And the eternal Quran must be written in the Qurayshi dialect. Right. How can you have an eternal Quran written in the Qurayshi dialect when you don't have dots and vowels that early? Dots and vowels were written by men. So he asked Jibril to give him 6 other dialectical differences so that his people who are coming to Medina and Mecca could understand what he was saying. So Jibril does that. Could Muhammad have understood those dialectical differences?
I doubt it.
Because where did those dialects come from?
They came from north.
Basra, Kufa, Damascus. Had Muhammad ever gone there and learned those dialects?
And even if he did, how come he did not indicate that it was revealed this way until Ibn Mujahid uncovered that hadith for us?
Exactly. So this is what I do, and this is what you all can do. Ask your Muslim friend. Okay, so he was given 7 by Jibril. What are those 7? Give me the names. Every Muslim I've asked that question to, they start, oh yeah, this is Nafi, Ibn Kathir, Abu Amr, Ibn Amir, Asim, Hamza, and Al-Qasai. I said, wait a minute. Those are the 7? Yes, those are the 7. Even Yasser Qadi said that. He started referring to these 7. Those don't even begin to appear until 736.
That's right.
These are 8th century. You cannot use this at the time of Muhammad. These were not written down. They didn't even exist. These guys weren't even living at that time that wrote these down in those dialects. There was no way you could have had dialectical forms that early, and there's no way that Muhammad could have known those 7 dialects, even if he did, because he never went to those cities and lived there to learn the dialects. Nonetheless, can you see there's enormous problems here. So here's what's fascinating. He then, let's go to the next, go back to the slide again. We now have 7 Qurans, right? We're now up to 7 Qurans.
Right.
The Qureshi plus 6 others.
Right.
Which are from Basra, Kufa, and Damascus, as the Muslims always tell me. Uthman then comes in and says, no, we've got to get it back to 1 because of all that happened up there in Azerbaijan. So he asked Zayd ibn Thabit to write it, and that has 114 surahs. You see that 114 I have it there? 114 surahs is Zayd ibn Thabit's. And we're told that it's this one here, the Hafstek. We'll get to that. Now, suddenly, there is a problem, because now you're back to 1 Quran again. From 7 back to 1.
Right.
All right? 7 back to 1. However, 5 copies of this 1 Quran are sent to 5 cities. Let's look at the 5 cities. Take a look at your screen. There's one. That is Yathrib, which is the archaic name for Medina.
Right.
One was sent down to Mecca, there in the south. I have them in green because this is the Qureshi. When you see green, that's Qureshi, just for this segment. And then one was sent there to Basra. One was sent up there to Kufa. And one was sent up there to Damascus. Are you seeing that on the map?
Right.
The problem is they must be Qureshi. Oh, let's make sure they're green. Okay, so let's turn the green. Bing, 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 bing. Now they're back to green again. So now you have 5 Qureshi Qurans in 5 different cities with 5 different readers. We're told that these are 5 readers, so they would make sure that they would not pollute them, they would not change them, and never again have another Quran that's beside the Qureshi Quran. Okay, this is what the traditions say. However, you got another problem, because then suddenly 3 other Qurans start to appear. You have Ubay ibn Ka'b's Quran that appears in Damascus. He is one of the companions of the Prophet.
Right.
So he's even more important than Zayd ibn Thabit. Remember, Zayd ibn Thabit was just a little lad when Ubay ibn Ka'b, and this guy here, Ibn Masud, had already written 70 surahs.
And by the way, Ibn Masud has 111, some say 112 surahs. Ubay has 116.
Take a look at there. So these are not 114s. These are completely different Qurans, aren't they?
Right.
And these are, take a look where they are. They're up in the north, in Damascus and in Kufa. That's in Syria and Iraq. So here you have Ubay ibn Ka'b with 116. He should have 114. That's not the same Quran. You have Ibn Masud, who has 111 surahs. That should be 114. That's too few. And they are not at all down here in Mecca, Medina. They're up in Syria and Iraq. And then you have a third one by Ibn Musa. And his is 114 surahs, so we're told. But can you notice the problem? Now suddenly those 3 at the top are no longer green. They're now red, which means these are not the same Qurans, and we're still in the 7th century.
Right.
We haven't even moved into the 8th century yet. So already you have a corruption going on in the north.
Right.
Up in the north again. Hold on a minute. I thought our good friend Uthman burned everything from the north. Evidently he didn't, because you still have Ubay ibn Ka'b, Ibn Masud, and Ibn Musa, and they become very popular in those 3 cities.
Right.
Insurrection going on.
And it's obvious that that's the case.
That's the case. So that's the problem, all the problems I have with Kanon number 1. Let's now go to Kanon number 2. Now, before we go on, let me just put this thing. Notice they are all in the north and from the very cities whose Qurans were burned by Uthman earlier. Okay? Now we get to Kanon number 2. What problems do we have here? Well, this is now the 8th century. We're moving into the 8th century, and now you have Uthman's Qureshi in 622. Suddenly you have this Quran appearing by Ibn Amir from Damascus. Look at the date, 736, but his is not alone. Then you have Ibn Kathir. His is 738. He is from Mecca.
Right.
That would be Qureshi. Am I correct?
Yes. I mean, supposedly, because it's Mecca.
All right.
So one would argue that it is.
Now suddenly you have Asib Ibn Abi al-Najud. His is from Kufa. That's Iraqi.
It is. Modern day Iraq.
745 is when he died. Then you have Abu Amr. Why don't you read their names as I put them up, because you know much better than
Abu
I.
Amr Ibn al-Ala.
And he's 770. So now we're getting to the...
Al-A'la, I'm sorry. Ibn al-Ala.
And so he's getting really towards the end of the 8th century. And then you have this guy.
And then you have Hamza.
Okay, and he's from Kufa again. Hold on a minute. Did we already get one from Kufa? Yeah, this is the second one from Kufa. Then we get this guy, Nafi
al-Madani.
He's from Medina.
Yeah.
785. And finally we get this guy, Al-Kasai, right? Again from Kufa.
Again, yeah.
So 3 from Kufa, 1 from Damascus, 2 from the Hijaz, which would be Medina and Mecca, and 1 from Basra. All right, fascinating. These are the 7 that Muslims always say existed at the time of Muhammad. No, they did not exist at the time of Muhammad. Look at their dates. 736 all the way to 805. That's the problem. Who's the guy that chose him? This guy chose him, Ibn Mujahid. Look at his dates.
Why he decided only these out of all the readings that were available to him.
Out of about 700 that were available to him by the 10th century.
That's right.
Out of about 700, why did he choose these 7?
So it must be popularity also.
It's all to do with popularity. Yeah. Who is the one that has the most students?
The criteria he used, if I see that someone, a reader, have so many people who follow their style, then that must be canonized and must be revealed to Muhammad.
There you go.
He decided what was revealed to Muhammad based on number of followers.
Now, did he know Muhammad? Was he sitting at Muhammad's feet?
Not.
Did he live in that century? Did he even come from that area? Absolutely not on all 3. He came from the 10th century, 300 years later. Let's look at the time that Uthman's Qurayshi, the one that was supposed to have been the canonical one from the last century. That's 84 years later that these others start to appear. 84 years after the canon was put in place, now you have 7 others that come up that are not part of that canon.
Right.
Okay? So that is canon number 2. I want to just put this one more, that Muhammad's death, it's 104 years after Muhammad's death. Now, I just want to bring up the Abbasids one more time. I keep on reminding you, this is all during the Abbasid period. Let's go to canon number 3. Boom, boom, boom. Canon number 3, now let's go up there. We've already talked about canon 2. There it is. Let's go and see what we have here. Following this, we have 7 designated readers. Al-Shatibi, is that how you pronounce it?
Shatibi, yeah.
In 1194 chose 14 rawat. And we're going to bring them all up here, the 14 rawat. There you are. Each one of those 7 readers is given 2. He had a good 700 he could have chosen from. He chose 2 for every one. What was his criteria? We talked about in the last episode.
Same thing.
Popularity.
It was popularity, and he's choosing 2 just to justify the transmission, basically.
Just to justify
almost
the
like
transmission.
A 2 eyewitness. To the reading, not to the person.
And the reason, you can see then there's another problem here. The guy named Warsh that we talked about earlier, he was not chosen for popularity. He was chosen for geography,
because I want people to look at the dates. I mean, for instance, you have the reader in green. Look at the dates of those who are transmitting his material. They're not even his age or his time.
And a lot of them were not students that even lived at the time that they're supposedly their stable leaders lived. Now, this is the guy that I'm looking at, because this one I've just circled in black. I want to look at him because he is the one that is the one we're using today. And he does not introduce his Quran for 144 years after Muhammad. Hugely important. And I can just say, let's bring up our good old friends. That's 164 years after Muhammad. And of course, they're all after the Abbasid period. I'm going to keep bringing it up. You'll see how I'm going to bring it towards the end of all these episodes. Now we get to Canon 4. We already have now 21 qira'ats. If that's not bad enough, you have our good friend, good old man. His name is Al-Jazari. He is in the 15th century, and he chooses another 9. 3 readers, isn't that interesting? You brought this up before. Why is that important? Because the 3 readers, along with the 7,
makes it 10, and supposedly those are canonized. There is another tradition that added 4 more, made them 14, and then they decided anything beyond that is heretical. Well, who get to decide what is heretical and what is not?
Well, Al-Jazari is considered to be the scholar of all scholars. He is the one that is always the father of all the qira'at. And look at his date. It's 1429. He made this decision. 1429 to make it and aggrandize it, bring it up to 30. So now you have 30. You have 7 plus 14 plus 3 plus 6. That makes 30 in my count. 30 official Qurans. They're all there up on the screen. 30 of them. But that's the 4th canonization. We want to just show that that's a good 797 years. Roughly, we're talking about 800 years. All of them coming after the Abbasids. Now we come to canon number 5. And canon number 5 is from 7 to 21 up to 30, then we have to come back down to 1 again. There he is. What is that? Well, one official Quran chosen 96 years ago. Interestingly, only chosen in Cairo. They have to then, for all of Egypt, that is the Farouk edition. That was chosen in 1936. But that's still not good enough, because if you want it for the whole world, then you have to go to King Fahd, who then chose this Quran in 1985. Why was Hafs chosen? Do you know the reason?
If I want to take a wild guess, we're talking again about probably popularity contest.
Well, no, in this case it wasn't a popularity contest. The reason that Muhammad Ibn Ali Husseini al-Haddad chose him in 1924 is because the Ottomans liked him. He was chosen by the Ottomans, who come into power in 1299. So that's the 13th century.
So he was popular among the Ottomans.
There you go. And why did the Ottomans choose him? Because he comes close to where they live. They live up in Turkey. They wanted one that was from Iraq, and so they chose Hafs because he was very easy to read. Fascinating.
The NIV of the Quran.
That's right. They had nothing to do with textual criticism. It had nothing to do with manuscript, textual, looking at a manuscript. It didn't look at any of the Topkapi, the Samarkand Mahil, the Husseini, the Petropolitanus, or the Sana'a manuscript. Any of the 6 major manuscripts, we don't know of any reference of any of these manuscripts they looked at.
Take the 1924 Cairo edition, look at the introduction, and show me which manuscript did they reference.
That's right. They can't. So what do? Well, you can see that all of these, as are going up on the screen, all of these that are being chosen are chosen 2 to 3 to 800 years after the fact. And I've never heard any Muslim talk about this. And that's why we have to put it on a timeline. Do they see how stupid this sounds in public when you say that these were all existing at the time of Muhammad, and that Muhammad knew all of these, and these guys were there, these dialects were given to Muhammad, that these are nothing more than dialectical differences, and there's no difference as far as doctrine, there's no difference as far as practice, there's no difference as far as meaning. They all say the same thing. No, they do not. Have any of them looked at the 93,000 differences between the ones you see on the screen right here? How many Muslims have even known that? How many Muslims even know how many differences? It was our group.
That a whole lot of them know anything about this.
It was our group in London that found out that 93, and that's just looking at 23 of the 30 that we have accessible.
That's why I feel bad for my people, my Muslim people, because unfortunately they don't know about these things, and when these facts come out, you have babblers like Yasser Qadi who come and attack without even any knowledge.
Not one word, not one letter different. Right. Every one of these is different. That's why you have the different names. If they were all the same, all you would do is just choose one of them. Say, we don't need the others. Why do you think you needed 30 of them? Because all 30 of them were different. For instance, we know that this one here, the Wats that we talked about earlier, this is very popular in North Africa.
Right.
And that's why they memorized this one in North Africa. All around the rest of the world, they memorized this one.
That's correct.
There are 5,000 differences between these 2 books right here.
And which one is preserved right now in the tablets in heaven?
Which one of these 5,000 differences?
Yeah.
Now, before we finish, I have 2 more slides to show.
Right.
Because I want to show you what then this north-south divide. More than that, let's just look at all of the 30 qira'ats, 8 of them from the Hijaz, 22 of them are from what we know as Iraq and Syria. Today's Hafs is also from Kufa, which is Iraq. The conclusion, a minority of the Qurans originated in Mecca and Medina, while the majority were too far to the north. All of these northern areas, except Cairo, are where the Abbasids originated. You're going to get tired of me saying the Abbasid. You'll see why later on. Can you then understand why we're saying this? This is hugely significant. And that's why, folks, you need to look at the maps. You need to look at the timelines. When you see the timelines, when you look at the maps, you realize there is a real problem that Islam has not even dealt with. They've got to deal with this north dominance. They've got to deal with the fact that almost all of these start to appear in the 8th, 9th, and 10th century. They do not come from the 7th century. And certainly this one comes from 796, the late 8th century. Proving to me that none of these come from Muhammad, and none of these come from heaven, and none of these come from Uthman.
Amen to that. So hopefully everyone is enjoying the series, enjoying the data that we are sharing with you. You can see now why we're asking these serious questions. Thank you. Until next time, have a blessed day.